Auditor Calax moved through the corridors of Nexus Point 5 with precise, efficient strides. Its movements were economical, without wasted gestures. Calax was a Zargonian, a species known throughout the explored galaxy for their unwavering dedication to logic, efficiency, and absolute seriousness. Zargonian society viewed any deviation from optimal performance, especially frivolous activities like humor or unnecessary emotional displays, as critical systemic flaws, detrimental to progress and survival. Calax's physical form reflected this philosophy. Its body was lean, encased in smooth slate-gray bioplating that served as both protection and interface. Its head featured multiple optical sensors that scanned the environment constantly, gathering data. Communication was direct, precise, usually via data bursts or, when dealing with other species like humans, through a highly accurate vocal translator that rendered its thoughts into flat, uninflected speech. Nexus Point 5 was a joint research station, a collaboration between the Zargonian Collective and the burgeoning Human Federation, located in deep space near a complex stellar nursery. It was Calax's mission to perform a full operational audit, assess resource allocation, evaluate workflow efficiency, identify deviations from protocol, and recommend corrective actions. Standard procedure. From the moment Calax arrived, the human element presented significant deviations. The Zargonian sections of the station were models of clean lines, standardized equipment, and silent focus. The human sections were not. Workstations were cluttered with personal items, framed images of biological relatives, family, ceramic containers holding stimulating heated beverages, mugs, even small non-functional plastic figurines, toys. Calax meticulously logged these as unauthorized personalization of workspace. Potential distraction factor, high. Resource allocation, non-essential. Then there was the interaction style. Humans engaged in frequent, seemingly aimless vocalizations. They exchanged brief, illogical statements, followed by sharp, barking exhalations, jokes, followed by laughter. This often occurred during work periods. Calax observed 2 human technicians attempting to repair a sensor array. "Okay, just gotta bypass the secondary coupling," one human said. "Sure, if it doesn't decide to spontaneously combust again," the other replied. The first human snorted. "Knowing our luck? 50-50. Hand me the hydrospanner, Sparky." Calax recorded the exchange. Log entry 001. Communication inefficiency noted between human technicians H7 and H9. Duration 7.3 standard seconds. Information conveyed minimal. Inclusion of speculative negative outcome, spontaneously combust, and non-standard designation, Sparky. Purpose assumed team cohesion ritual. Efficiency impact negative. This pattern repeated constantly. Humans talked while walking, shared food during non-designated nutritional intake periods, lunch breaks that often exceeded minimum time requirements, and made illogical facial expressions indicating emotional states Calax's translator tagged as amusement, frustration, or mild irritation, all useless data points from a Zargonian perspective. Calax's optical sensors tracked movement patterns. Human paths through corridors were often indirect, deviating to engage in brief, non-essential communication exchanges. Zargonian paths were direct, point to point. The contrast was stark. The initial assessment forming in Calax's logical mind was clear. The human element introduced significant inefficiency into the station's operations. Their lack of focus, their tolerance for deviation, their constant engagement in non-productive social rituals, it all pointed to a species lacking the discipline required for complex, deep space operations. The Zargonians, Calax concluded, were likely compensating significantly for human shortcomings to maintain station functionality. Calax consulted the station schedule. The next designated human inefficiency cluster was imminent. Mid-cycle sustenance and recaffeination period, commonly referred to by the humans as coffee break. Calax observed a group of human scientists gathering in a designated rec room, another non-essential allocation of space in Calax's view. They obtained heated beverages from a dispensing machine and congregated around a table. Observation target: Human Science Team Alpha. Calax logged. Activity: scheduled cessation of primary duties for consumption of psychoactive stimulant, caffeine, and non-structured social interaction. Duration: 15 standard minutes, scheduled, likely to exceed. Calax positioned itself at an observation point, intending to meticulously document the time wasted, the illogical conversation patterns, and the overall inefficiency of this ritual. This coffee break would serve as a prime data point in the final audit report, clearly illustrating the need for stricter protocols and reduced tolerance for human frivolity on Nexus Point 5. The path to optimal performance required the elimination of such deviations. Auditor Calax continued its meticulous documentation. The human coffee break exceeded the allocated 15 minutes by 4.7 standard minutes. During this period, Calax logged 18 instances of non-task-oriented vocalizations, jokes, anecdotes, social inquiries, and 32 distinct occurrences of non-functional respiratory bursts, laughter. Total time units calculated as lost to inefficiency during this single event, approximately 12 person-minutes across the 4 scientists involved. Multiplied across the entire human crew and the station's operational cycle, the projected cumulative inefficiency was significant. Calax proceeded to observe other human activities. A botanist tending to experimental hydroponics was observed humming, a non-linguistic patterned vocalization with no apparent function. 2 engineers calibrating a long-range comms dish engaged in a brief, simulated physical altercation, high five, after resolving a minor software glitch. Each instance was recorded, time-stamped, and categorized under deviation, non-optimal behavior. The data reinforced Calax's initial assessment. Human operational methods were fundamentally flawed, riddled with unproductive rituals and emotional interference. The Zargonian sections, by contrast, operated with near-perfect adherence to workflow projections. The logical conclusion was that human participation actively hindered Nexus Point 5 from achieving peak performance. Then, the alarms blared. Urgent, synthesized klaxons echoed through the station corridors, accompanied by flashing red alert lights. Calax's internal sensors immediately accessed the station network. Alert condition: containment field fluctuation, sector gamma 7. Primary field integrity, 81% and decreasing. Secondary field status, holding. Risk profile, moderate, escalating. Sector gamma 7 housed the primary experimental apparatus for studying the turbulent stellar nursery nearby, a complex array generating miniature, controlled singularities to analyze particle behavior. A containment breach would be problematic. Calax's protocols shifted instantly from audit to crisis observation. It proceeded efficiently towards the Gamma 7 control center. The human science team Calax had observed during the coffee break: Dr. Aris Thorne, astrophysicist; Dr. Lena Petrova, particle physicist; specialist Jian Li, containment engineer; and junior researcher Samira Khan, were already converging there, their previously relaxed demeanors replaced with focused urgency. Zargonian engineers were also en route, moving with characteristic speed and silence. Inside the control room, data streamed across large monitors, showing the rapidly degrading containment field. The air crackled with tension. "Okay, primary emitter cascade failure," Lee reported, fingers flying across a console. "Backup isn't compensating properly. Field geometry is destabilizing." "Can we reroute power through the auxiliary conduits?" Thorne asked, scanning energy flow charts. "Maybe," Petrova mused, "if we want to risk frying the entire secondary grid." Remember what happened last time we tried a hot shunt? Thorne winced. Point taken. Okay, Jian, can you manually align the tertiary projectors to reinforce the weak points? Trying, Lee grunted, wrestling with the controls. It's like trying to thread a needle during an earthquake, dressed in a spacesuit, blindfolded. Khan, monitoring the core singularity readings, muttered, Well, on the bright side, if this goes boom, my thesis research on exotic particle decay will get some very dramatic data. Petrova shot her a look, but there was a flicker of dark humor in her eyes. Too dramatic, Samira. Let's aim for publishable, not posthumous. Kalax, observing from a corner, logged the exchange. Log entry 042. Crisis response inefficiency. Introduction of non-constructive hypothetical negative outcomes, boom, and inappropriate levity, posthumous, during critical containment failure. Focus compromised. As Lee struggled with the failing projectors, Thorne had an idea. We need a physical stabilizer, something to dampen the resonance harmonics hitting the failing emitters. Now. There's nothing rated for that kind of focused field stress, Lee protested. So we build something, Thorne declared. He pointed to a pile of recently decommissioned diagnostic equipment and spare parts in an adjacent alcove. Lena, Samira, scavenge. We need resonant dampeners, high-capacity capacitors, and anything that looks vaguely like a magnetic bottle nozzle. Jian, keep wrestling with those projectors. What followed baffled Kalax. Instead of calmly and efficiently selecting components based on calculated need, Petrova and Khan began grabbing parts with what seemed like chaotic energy, making sarcastic comments as they went. Ooh, look! The focusing coil from the old spectrometer. Maybe its sheer disappointment at being scrapped will bore the singularity into submission, Petrova quipped, holding up a burnished ring. Found capacitors, Khan announced, hefting heavy cylinders. Slightly leaky, but hey, adds an element of surprise. They began assembling a device on a mobile work platform, a bizarre contraption of mismatched parts held together with temporary clamps, exposed wiring, and generous amounts of metallic bonding tape. They worked quickly, but their movements were punctuated by muttered jokes and critiques of their own creation. Does this capacitor look unstable to you? Only emotionally. Kalax meticulously recorded the process. Log entry 045. Non-standard equipment fabrication initiated. Component selection appears arbitrary. Construction methodology lacks formal design specification. Continuous non-essential vocalizations noted. Probability of functional success low. Projected impact on crisis resolution timeline negative. To Kalax's logical mind, this was madness. Facing imminent danger, the humans were joking, playing with scraps, wasting precious seconds on irrelevant banter. Their lack of seriousness, their embrace of chaos, was surely sealing their fate. Failure, Kalax concluded with high certainty, was the only logical outcome of such undisciplined behavior. The containment field integrity dipped below 70%. Warning chimes intensified. Inside the Gamma-7 control room, the human team worked with frantic energy around their bizarre creation, a Frankenstein's monster of salvaged tech, bristling with wires and mismatched components. Kalax observed, its internal processors calculating the steadily increasing probability of catastrophic failure. Okay, Project Hail Mary is ready for deployment, Dr. Thorne announced, gesturing towards the contraption. Jian, can you create a focused opening in the secondary field? Coordinate 0.7. Are you serious? That thing looks like it'll explode if we sneeze on it, Lee retorted, but his hands were already flying across the console. Opening secondary field aperture, now! You've got 3 seconds before I have to cycle it. Lena, Samira, align and activate. Gently, Thorne instructed. Petrova and Khan maneuvered the device into position, aiming its jury-rigged nozzle towards the designated point near the wavering primary field. Activating. Hope this capacitor doesn't have stage fright, Khan muttered. flipping a large, obviously repurposed switch. The device hummed, sparked ominously, and then emitted a low, resonant thrum. A beam of shimmering, distorted energy projected from its nozzle, hitting the precise point where the primary containment field was weakest. On the main screen, the angry red lines depicting the field fluctuations flickered, then stabilized. The integrity percentage stopped falling. It held at 68%, then slowly began to climb back up. 69%. 70%. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. "Well, I'll be," Lee breathed, slumping back slightly. The junk pile special actually worked. "Never doubt the power of desperation and poorly documented components," Petrova said, wiping sweat from her forehead. She grinned at Khan. "Told you that leaky capacitor just needed motivation." "I think it was my inspiring commentary," Khan added dryly. They exchanged another high five. The Zargonian engineers, who had arrived and were efficiently rerouting primary power, paused momentarily, observing the stabilized field and the human's unconventional device with impassive curiosity before returning to their tasks. Kalax remained perfectly still, but its internal processing was running at maximum capacity. The outcome directly contradicted its logical projections. Based on observed inefficiencies, behavioral deviations, and non-standard methodologies, the human team should have failed. Their chaotic approach, their persistent humor under duress, their reliance on improvised technology, all pointed towards a negative result according to established Zargonian risk assessment models. Yet they had succeeded, and rapidly. Anomaly detected. Positive outcome inconsistent with predicted failure probability. Kalax logged internally, initiating deep analysis of event parameters. Kalax accessed every available data stream related to the preceding event. Communication logs were cross-referenced with biometric readings transmitted by the human's standard environmental suits, heart rate, respiration, estimated stress hormone analogues. Sensor logs tracked the environmental conditions and equipment performance. Kalax reviewed the recordings of the team's interactions, this time not just logging inefficiency, but analyzing patterns. The correlations began to emerge, stark and undeniable within the cold, hard data. Periods immediately following instances of shared humor, especially the dark jokes about failure, showed temporary but significant dips in the human's average stress indicators. Heart rates stabilized slightly, respiration patterns became less erratic. The laughter, Kalax hypothesized, acted as a rapid neurochemical reset, briefly mitigating the physiological effects of extreme stress. The seemingly chaotic, playful construction phase of the dampening device involved rapid-fire idea exchange across disciplines. Petrova's joke about the spectrometer coil had apparently triggered Thorne's realization about resonance dampening. Khan's comment about leaky capacitors led Lee to suggest a specific power modulation technique to compensate. Their nonlinear, joking interactions facilitated unexpected cognitive leaps, lateral thinking. The constant banter, the shared expressions of gallows humor, served to reinforce their interpersonal bonds during the crisis. There were no recriminations or panic, only focused effort layered with a strange camaraderie. This inefficient communication maintained team cohesion under pressure far exceeding Zargonian operational norms for teams facing similar failure cascades. Kalax cross-referenced these findings with Zargonian performance data from the archives. Zargonian teams under extreme stress exhibited high efficiency in executing known procedures, but demonstrated significant cognitive rigidity when faced with entirely novel problems requiring improvisation. Panic was suppressed, but creativity often suffered. Collaboration could become brittle under extreme pressure. The revelation struck Kalax with the force of a proven theorem. Human humor was not a flaw. It was not inefficiency. It was a highly evolved, multifunctional cognitive and social tool. It modulated stress, stimulated creative problem-solving by breaking rigid thought patterns, and enhanced collaborative resilience. It was an algorithm for navigating chaos, embedded not in silicon, but in biology and culture. What Zargonians achieved through rigid discipline and suppression, humans achieved, in certain complex situations, through flexibility, connection, and controlled absurdity. The inefficiency Calax had meticulously logged was, in fact, a crucial component of their success. It was the lubricant in their cognitive engine, allowing them to perform under pressures that might cause a purely logical Zargonian unit to freeze or fracture. Laughter wasn't illogical noise. It was the sound of a different kind of logic operating. The logic of adaptation, resilience, and creative survival. Auditor Calax stood impassively as the human team secured the containment field using more permanent solutions, guided now by the Zargonian engineers applying precise calculations based on the data provided by the human's improvised device. The immediate crisis was over, but for Calax, a profound internal conflict had just begun. The data was irrefutable. Human humor, in the context of the Gamma-7 incident, demonstrably contributed to a positive outcome by mitigating stress, fostering creative solutions, and strengthening team cohesion under extreme duress. This conclusion, derived through rigorous logical analysis of observed phenomena, directly contradicted foundational Zargonian principles. Zargonian doctrine stated that optimal performance stemmed from unwavering seriousness, emotional suppression, and rigid adherence to protocol. Humor was categorized as frivolous, inefficient, and detrimental. Calax experienced a state for which its internal lexicon had no precise term, but which resembled cognitive dissonance. Logic demanded acceptance of the data. Cultural programming demanded rejection of the conclusion. It was a paradox. But Calax was, above all, an auditor. Its function was to analyze data and report findings, regardless of whether they fit preconceived notions. To ignore the evidence regarding humor's function would be illogical, a greater deviation from its core programming than challenging established doctrine. Returning to its designated analysis module, Calax began compiling the final audit report for Nexus Point 5. The initial sections were straightforward, detailing resource usage, comparing Zargonian and human operational metrics, and listing the numerous instances of deviation from optimal workflow observed among the human crew, the personalized workspaces, the extended breaks, the non-essential communication. Protocol demanded these be noted. Then came the section analyzing the Gamma-7 containment incident. Calax described the event objectively. It documented the human team's unconventional methods, including the construction of the non-standard dampening device. And then, Calax began drafting the addendum, the controversial part. Addendum 4.7b, Analysis of Human Crisis Response Methodology, Gamma-7 Incident. Calax dictated to the report interface. While exhibiting significant deviations from standard Zargonian operational doctrine, see Section 3.1, Inefficiency Metrics, the human team achieved successful crisis resolution with unexpected rapidity. Deep analysis correlates specific non-standard behaviors, humor, playful ideation, informal communication, with measurable positive impacts. Stress. Mitigation. Biometric data indicates temporary reduction in physiological stress markers following humor instances. Enhanced cognitive flexibility. Communication logs suggest humor facilitated non-linear problem-solving, lateral thinking, leading to the improvised dampening device. Increased team cohesion. Informal communication patterns appeared to strengthen collaborative resilience under high-pressure conditions. Calax paused. This was factual. Now came the logical, yet potentially explosive, recommendation. Recommendation 12.4. Further investigation warranted regarding potential applications of controlled cognitive flexibility rituals within Zargonian operational frameworks. Calax chose the term carefully, avoiding the frivolous word humor. Specifically, research protocols should be developed to assess whether structured exercises designed to induce temporary cognitive shifts, analogous to human humor play, could enhance Zargonian performance in complex, non-routine problem-solving scenarios, particularly within research and development and crisis response units, where cognitive rigidity has been identified as a limiting factor. It was done. Calax reviewed the complete report. It was logically sound, data-supported, and fulfilled the auditor's primary function: objective analysis and reporting for the improvement of the collective. It also implicitly criticized millennia of Zargonian cultural philosophy. With a final, decisive mental command, Calax transmitted the encrypted report directly to the Zargonian Central Audit Directorate on the homeworld. Calax was fully aware of the potential consequences. Such a report could be flagged as deviant, potentially leading to reassignment, re-education, or even decommissioning. Challenging core tenets, even with supporting data, was risky. But logic demanded the truth be reported. Its primary task complete, Calax deactivated its formal audit functions. Its optical sensors happened to glance towards the station's rec room viewport. Inside, the human Gamma-7 team was gathered again. They looked exhausted, but relieved. Dr. Thorne said something, and the others erupted in laughter, louder and more relaxed this time than during the crisis. They were sharing food, recounting the events, probably exaggerating their own near-death experiences for comedic effect. Before the revelation, Calax would have logged this as further evidence of inefficiency, a pointless expenditure of energy after a crisis. Now, observing the scene, Calax perceived it differently. It wasn't just noise. It was the sound of a system recalibrating, bonds reinforcing, experiences being processed and integrated through a complex social algorithm Calax was only beginning to understand. It was, in its own strange way, logical. A different logic, perhaps, but functional nonetheless. The audit was complete, but Calax suspected its own learning had just begun.